Good morning. Yesterday we talked about grief and the stages of grief that we work through when we're grieving a bereavement or anything to do with really the current crisis. We're grieving a loss of our way of life. So the final stage of that process was acceptance, and we said that it's actually really hard to get to that point where you can accept the fact that your life has changed, that you start to integrate it into your reality, that you start to be happy in spite of those changes. So today I want to talk a little bit about acceptance and things that we can try to help us along to that point. And it will be different things for different people depending on your own personality. But here are some ideas. One of the big problems with the current situation is the loss of control, that we feel like we have very little control over what we do, and that makes it much harder for us to cope with all of this. A useful way of thinking about that is the work of a man called Viktor Frankl, who you may have heard of. He was a psychiatrist who was imprisoned in the concentration camps during World War II, and he managed to turn his experiences into a book about how to make the best of those circumstances. And one of the things he said is everything can be taken from a man, but one thing. The last of human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. And so the idea of that is that there are lots of things that you can't control, but you can control how you respond to that. We basically can achieve some kind of control by different ways. And one way of doing that might be to make sensible preparations for how you're going to take care of your family, if that's something that's important to you. And even, buying food, making sure you've got healthy food in the house, learning to cook, cooking healthy new meals. My son's been making bread constantly for the last few weeks, it seems. All of that is about controlling what you can control. You can control that you're going to eat well and you're going to be okay and you're going to take care of each other. Helping other people is also a really good way of starting to feel better and starting to feel you can control something. So, helping older people with their shopping at these times, having volunteer drives to collect money to help poor people, giving money to the food bank. My son was giving bread to some of the neighbours who are working in the healthcare professions. I've got a blog post on this a few weeks ago that I'll link to. But helping other people makes us feel better about ourselves as well, because it shows that we can do something. We're able to still contribute in a good way to the world. Gratitude is something you'll hear bandied a lot about, and some people have a gratitude journal where they write down each day the things that they're grateful for. Even if you don't do that, we are pretty lucky in this country, and it does behove us to remind ourselves of that every so often. So if you're lucky enough to have your family and friends, even if you can only see them on the computer screen rather than in real life, at least you've got them. We're grateful that we have free healthcare, because in many countries we couldn't afford to get healthcare if we got sick. So aren't we lucky that we have healthcare? It's not perfect, nothing is, but at least we have some kind of universal healthcare. We're lucky that we live in a safe country, because many people don't, and they're scared to go out, they're not able to go out, they're in fear of their lives. We're very lucky we're not in that position. We're lucky that we have some kind of financial safety net, and even if we've lost our jobs or our businesses, or we're worried about that, at least in this country there are at least some kind of state support. There are lots of initiatives being rolled out to help people. We're a lot luckier than a lot of other people. And so sometimes being a bit grateful for what we've got can help us to learn acceptance for the things that we have. A lot of people swear by meditation, and if that works for you, that's great. Mindfulness, being in the present, is also really important, because when you're in the present, you're not worrying about other things going on, and that can be very helpful and very calming. Yesterday I went and sat down on the beach, a long way from anybody else, and looked at the sea. And I always find that very calming, because it makes you realise how much bigger the world is than us, and how it keeps on going, and how our worries at the moment are actually quite inconsequential. I've also started reading a war diary from World War II. Basically, a young woman's experiences of living in London during the Blitz. And that's actually quite helpful, even though it could be seen as being negative. It makes us think about how what we're going through now, compared to living through a war, is actually relatively trivial in comparison. So that's actually been quite helpful to realise this is not going to last forever. We've still got a lot of freedoms and a lot of things we can do. And we've got a lot more to look forward to than people had at those times because they didn't know how the war was going to end. Overall, I think generally, certainly I'm coming to a realization of what's important and what's not important. And that's helping me to feel much better about the whole of this situation and that we can get through it. Things that would have bothered me a few weeks ago just don't matter. Now, I'm sitting here looking at the screen right now thinking, look at the state of my dark roots. How bad are they going to be when I can get to the hairdressers? Look at the state of my old saggy face and my jowly chin and everything else. And all of that stuff just doesn't matter now. I've got a healthy family. We're all safe. We've got food. We've got enough toilet roll for the moment. And that is what's important. That's what we need to focus on. What we have rather than what we don't have, I think. And that works for me. So I'd be interested to hear what works for you. And this is a process. We're not going to go all through life smiling every day, skipping along, feeling fantastic. But it's a process to get to a point where we can accept the problems that we're facing, we can accept what we have, and we can feel content in that moment. I'll finish with another quote from Viktor Frankl. When we are no longer able to change a situation, we're challenged to change ourselves. Wise words.